Number 3 on the slate, Oklahoma versus TCU. Let's look at the showdown. Both of these teams are coming off some interesting weeks. TCU against the SMU game, they won 42-34. That was a pretty intense rivalry, a rivalry that's growing based on the old head coach. And then we all know what happened in Oklahoma, losing against Kansas State 41-34. Kansas State just has Oklahoma's number. It doesn't matter who's the head coach there. Apparently Brett Venables inherited the Kansas State woes as well. 3-1 for Oklahoma. TCU's 3-0, but obviously these teams look a little different. Other than the SMU win, TCU really hasn't played anyone. But neither really, other than Kansas State, has Oklahoma. Oklahoma really hasn't played anybody as well. The only team they have played is the team they lost to. So there's not a lot of views on, is Oklahoma good? And there are some woes of this defense because Brett Venables still trying to figure it out and get his defense in there and adjusted. We know that once Brett Venables gets his defense in, that defense is going to be like Iowa like. It's going to be a very good defense once it actually happens. It's just when. Does it happen this season? Is it something that needs to come in year 2? Oklahoma's fans don't like to wait. And I think that's something that you see. Could easily be a game in my mind that could be a very close game. TCU could sneak one, or this could be an absolute rebound game for Oklahoma, and they just completely blow out the Horned Frogs. What's your initial reactions on this one?
Well, my initial reaction is that maybe I was wrong because I've been touting Oklahoma all year as being the team that's going to come out of the Big 12. Defensively, they're not a bad football team, but like you said, I think all of the new looks and all of the new schemes, it's going to take a while. Now, ideally, they make progression every week so that when you're getting down to the conference playoff and then the national championship, now your defense is starting to gel. Oklahoma is just dangerous. They average 40.3, points per game, over 500 total yards per game. Most impressive to me is they're averaging more than 70 plays per game. So whatever little issues that might be out there with the defense, and again, other than Kansas State, they really haven't played anybody. Perhaps that's something that really is going to help that defense get better, because when you're on the sidelines, now you're working with your coordinators and your rather positional coaches, and you can talk about little things that might have been happening in the previous series that's buying you more time to go through that stuff. So I personally just don't see that was a huge win. TCU SMU is a mega rivalry going back into the 50s and 60s. So and it was just a terrific effort by TCU. Their quarterback, he gets it done. He leads the nation in passer rating. He's the number 1 rated as far as passer rating goes in the country. So TCU could find some blemishes in that Oklahoma defense. They can put up some points, but I think Oklahoma just has too much. TCU is just not going to be able to keep up with them. You could argue that TCU is going to be sort of on a down, not that's going to be down, but it's hard to have 2 games back to back with the talent level that TCU has. I just don't think they're going to have enough to overcome what Oklahoma is going to throw at them. And they have. No, I was just going to say, and they have been prone to giving up some high yardage games, even to inferior opponents. So.
Right. It sounds like you and I are on the same page with this one. I think this entire game relies on not Oklahoma's defense, not what TCU can do, but what Dylan Gabriel can do. I think there's some opportunities for the could-be Heisman Trophy winner to really make a name for himself. He's had an outstanding season so far. And again, other than Kansas State, which he played well, he played fantastic against Kansas State. But other than that game, they haven't really played many good teams. TCU is a great spot for him after a loss to Kansas State to rebound and really shine. And I think that if anybody's going to do that and this game turns into a complete blowout, it's because of this guy that's on your screen right now, and that's Dylan Gabriel. And I think that will put him in maybe not the front seat, but at least on that podium for a Heisman hopeful to start off the season. I think Dylan Gabriel is going to be someone that we watch on Sundays, someone that we enjoy watching on Sundays, someone who's not just sitting on the sidelines, but under center for one of those 32 teams in a few years.
And it's funny, because he probably is the Heisman favorite at this point. I mean, I think we both have like personal favorites. We think, oh, he should have the Heisman. But does he really get talked about enough?
And it's probably he's going to hear less about it because of the loss to Kansas State, while teams like Alabama and Ohio State stay undefeated because of CJ Stroud, because of Bryce Young. If those teams stay undefeated, then you're going to hear about them more than you hear about Dylan Gabriel. That's just probably how it is. It's probably why you're not hearing much about him, but don't sleep on this guy. And I think obviously we know not to sleep on him because we can see that he's already thrown over 1,000 yards this year. I don't even think they've thrown as much as they have to, although he's almost got 120, attempts already this year in 4 games. I think they could utilize him more. I think Dylan Gabriel is a guy that you're going to see, especially when they start getting deep in the Big 12 play, that he is the reason why Oklahoma stays in the race for the Big 12. That loss against Kansas State doesn't put them out of the Big 12 championship. Maybe in SEC, maybe that happens, but with the Big 12 and the Pac-12, these conferences are so deep this year that, in the Big 12, there's 8 teams I think that could be in the Big 12 championship this year. I think out of the 10, there's 8, and Oklahoma is definitely one of them.
Yeah, and it's funny because TCU does such a great job against the run. Oklahoma I want to say they're 10th in the nation in rushing, but TCU probably would rather have them run because they don't want Dylan Gabriel to be able to put up big plays and to beat him. So it's a really tricky tightrope that TCU is going to have to walk in this game. But as you pointed out, and the stats don't lie on the graphic here, Dylan Gabriel is a Heisman hopeful, probably a Heisman finalist. And against this TCU game, he's got to be like smiling. Not grinning, but he's got to keep it calm. But he's got to be smiling on the inside saying, oh, good, I can air it out because our rushing game might get shut down.
I'm with you 100%. And you were talking about earlier for the Horned Frogs, Max Duggan, and he's been playing great since his opener with he missed the opener with an injury. You said he's leading the nation in quarterback rating. If you look at his stats, they obviously don't look as good as Gabriel, but you have to take into account that he has played in one less football game. Last week against SMU, though, against a tough SMU game, almost 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. We haven't seen a pick from Duggan yet. We're going to see some good offense in this matchup. I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. When we look at the spread here, let's break it down. Oklahoma is currently a 6.5-point favorite as we're speaking right now. The over-under is 69.5. And according to ESPN Matchup Predictor, Oklahoma is a 65.5% predicted to win. 69.5 points between these two teams, and I want the over. That's how much I think we're going to have an offensive game. I think that both these teams combine for at least 70 points. I'm going to lean towards Oklahoma here. I think, as you can notice, I like Brent Venables. I think his defense is getting better and better week by week. Even though last week they had that loss, Brent Venables, I think, he's been in the Clemson organization for a long time. He knows how tough losses feel like. I think he's going to be able to get his team back up. I think he's going to be able to rebound this team very well. And I can see Oklahoma winning this game by a pretty decent margin. I think Oklahoma honestly is going to run away with this one. That's my thoughts on this one. And I'm taking Oklahoma with a 6.5-point favorite and the over.
I'm with you 1,000% on this. Oklahoma needs to start better. They had a decent start against Kansas State, but no matter who they're playing, they're really not starting well. Their first quarters haven't been great. I think in this game, Gabriel needs to take control, put up some points early, force TCU literally to have to play catch up the whole time. And eventually they're going to just get winded. Oklahoma just has too many weapons and too much firepower. Talk about defenses that bend but don't break. It seems late in games, Oklahoma's defense on a whole performs much better later in games when the game's on the line.